Okay, so we're seeing this real revolution happening in how we treat obesity. Everyone's talking about the new generation of GLP-1 drugs, like tirzepatide and semaglutide. They are incredibly effective at reducing weight, often by, over 20% in trials, which is well, it's unprecedented. But here's the sources you've shared really highlight. A significant challenge has emerged alongside this incredible efficacy muscle loss.
Absolutely. As these therapies drive substantial weight reduction, preserving lean body mass, that's your crucial skeletal muscle, has emerged as really a critical unmet need. It's far from just an aesthetic issue. It impacts strength, function, and long-term metabolic health in profound ways.
And we've taken a stack of sources, including some detailed analyses focusing on how companies are trying to preserve muscle to really get to grips with who's tackling this problem and how. Think of this deep dive as your shortcut to understanding the cutting edge, what people are starting to call quality weight loss.
Our mission today is to look closely at two distinct approaches highlighted in this material from Scholar Rock and Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals. We want to explore their science, their progress, and figure out why this specific race matters so much right now and what we should be watching for next.
So you mentioned that a substantial portion of the weight lost with these GLP-1s is lean mass. The sources put that number at 30% to 40% often. That sounds like a lot. Why is losing muscle such a big deal beyond just, looking less toned?
That percentage is definitely significant. And the impact is, well, it's widespread. Skeletal muscle isn't just for movement. It's incredibly metabolically active tissue. Losing it impacts your basal metabolic rate. That's how many calories you burn just sitting around. It reduces overall strength and mobility, makes it harder to regulate blood sugar, and frankly makes long-term weight management harder because your body is kind of burning fewer calories just existing. Physicians are increasingly concerned because it can lead to pain, worsen conditions like osteoarthritis, increase frailty, and potentially even lead to higher mortality risks, particularly in older patients.
Wow. Okay. So the game has really changed then. It's not just about the number on the scale dropping anymore. It's about optimizing what your body is actually losing. You want to maximize fat loss while preserving, or maybe even ideally, building muscle. This focus on optimizing body composition, that's really what defines quality weight loss.
Precisely. And that focus is creating a new high-value segment within the, let's face it, massive obesity market. Therapies that can deliver this kind of outcome, substantial fat loss with muscle preservation, are expected to be highly valued, not just by patients who want better function and health, but also by physicians and potentially by payers, too. They might see reduced long-term healthcare costs from fewer complications down the line,
Okay, so we have this clear unmet need. The sources point us to two key players taking, very different scientific routes to address it. Scholar Rock and Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals.
That's right. Scholar Rock is using an antibody therapy called apitegromab, targeting a pretty well-established pathway involved in muscle growth. Arrowhead, on the other hand, is using an RNAi therapeutic, ARO-INHBE, and that's a novel approach targeting a factor originating in the liver.
It really sounds like they're coming at this from completely opposite directions. Let's start with Scholar Rock. What's their strategy?
Scholar Rock's approach centers on myostatin. You can think of myostatin as a natural brake on how much muscle your body can build. It's basically a protein that signals your body to limit muscle growth.
Like an internal limiter, a natural governor.
Exactly. So when you reduce the signaling from myostatin, you can potentially increase muscle growth and improve strength. Apitegromab is a monoclonal antibody designed to specifically interact with this pathway.
And this is where it gets a little technical in the sources, talking about proforms and latent myostatin. How does their drug work specifically compared to, say, earlier attempts targeting myostatin?
Yeah, that's a key differentiator for Scholar Rock. Previous approaches often tried to block the active form of myostatin, or maybe its receptor. Apitegromab takes a different tack. It selectively binds to the proforms of myostatin, basically, the inactive precursors. It binds them before they're processed into the active form. By binding to promyostatin and latent myostatin upstream, it prevents enzymes from ever creating the biologically active molecule. It's like disabling the brake pedal mechanism itself before you even step on it. A highly specific way to remove that brake signal.
Okay, so it stops the active signal from even being formed. That sounds like a potentially, clever and powerful way to intervene. And Scholar Rock isn't exactly new to using this drug or this mechanism, right?
Far from it. And this is a major advantage for Scholar Rock, really. They have extensive experience with apitegromab in spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. SMA is a severe genetic disorder that causes profound muscle wasting and weakness. Apitegromab has shown statistically significant and clinically meaningful improvements in motor function in SMA patients in large phase 3 trials. Sapphire, for example.
So even though SMA is a completely different disease, they have solid human clinical validation that this drug can positively impact muscle mass and function?
Precisely. That prior success in a muscle wasting disorder provides a strong foundation and frankly de-risks the core mechanism for their use in obesity. They have a large body of safety data from thousands of SMA patients and a much more mature understanding of how the drug works in people, plus manufacturing know-how, all that stuff.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So tell us about the trial where they're testing apitegromab in the obesity setting alongside these GLP-1s.
That's the ARO-INHBE trial. It's a phase 2 study, so the proof of concept trial focusing on early efficacy and safety. It's designed as randomized, double-blind, and placebo-controlled. They've enrolled overweight or obese adults defined by a BMI over 27 or over 30. And crucially, these are people who are already receiving a standard GLP-1 RA, specifically tirzepatide or semaglutide.
They're testing apitegromab on top of the GLP-1 treatment, not as a standalone therapy.
Exactly. Participants receive either apitegromab or a placebo via intravenous, that's IV infusion, every 4 weeks for a total of 24 weeks. The primary endpoint, the main question they're asking in the trial, is the change in lean mass at week 24, and they measure that accurately using DEXA scans.
DEXA scans, right? That's a standard way to measure body composition, isn't it? And the timing for this data, you said it's a big deal.
It is. This is where it gets really interesting for people watching this space. Top-line data from the ARO-INHBE trial is highly anticipated and expected in June 2025. This is a major near-term catalyst for Scholar Rock, obviously, but also for the whole field focused on quality weight loss.
Okay, June 2025, that's coming up fairly soon. What are people watching for in this readout? What counts as success?
Our sources indicate this is essentially a go-no-go moment for Scholar Rock's obesity program. It's generating significant market attention, you bet. Analysts are estimating substantial stock volatility around the readout. Expectations, based on discussions in the sources, are for lean mass preservation somewhere between 25% and 40% at 24 weeks. That would be considered success.
25 to 40% preservation.
Yeah. Exceeding 40% could significantly boost their prospects, obviously. If the results are lower than that 25-40% range, attention might shift back more heavily to their SMA program.
And what about safety in this population? I mean, combined with GLP-1s?
Well, based on the extensive SMA trials, Toupe's, Sapphire, the ONX extension study, apitegromab has generally been well tolerated. Serious adverse events weren't commonly assessed as related to the drug in SMA. Common side effects there included things like headache, fever, and respiratory infections. Typical stuff. The ARO-INHBE trial data will give us the specific safety profile when combined with GLP-1 RAs in overweight and obese adults, which is crucial new information we need.
Okay, that gives us a clear picture, a Scholar Rock's approach, leveraging a known muscle pathway with an established drug, big readout coming in June 2025.
Now, let's pivot to Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals. ARO-INHBE. Totally different approach using RNA interference or RNAi.
Completely different path, yeah. RNAi is fascinating technology. It basically harnesses a natural cellular process to silence specific genes. You stop the cell from making a particular protein.
And in this case, the gene they're silencing is INHBE in the liver.
That's the one. ARO-INHBE is an RNAi therapeutic designed to knock down the expression of the INHBE gene specifically in liver cells.
Okay, but liver gene, how does that connect to muscle loss or fat metabolism?
Good question. So the INHBE gene produces a protein called activin E. It's a hepatokine, meaning made by the liver, circulates in the blood, acts elsewhere.
Okay.
And research suggests activin E is involved in regulating energy metabolism. It seems to signal through a receptor, ALK7, mainly found on fat cells.
What does that signal do?
It appears to promote fat storage and, maybe more importantly, suppress lipolysis, the breakdown of fat for energy.
Okay. So if activin E tells fat cells to store fat and not burn it,
then reducing active E levels might do the opposite. That's the hypothesis.
So ARO-INHBE silences the gene, lowers activin.
And the hope is that reduces the store fat, don't burn fat signal. This could lead to enhanced fat loss and, critically, based on their animal studies, preserve lean mass at the same time.
Interesting. Preserve lean mass through a liver target affecting fat metabolism.
Yeah.
What did those animal studies show?
They use diet-induced obese mouse models, pretty standard. Silencing the INHBE gene led to about a 20% reduction in weight gain, a nice 22-26% drop in fat mass.
And the lean mass?
Critically, lean mass was preserved or maintained compared to the control animals. Plus, they saw better blood sugar control and no signs of liver fat buildup, which is always a good safety signal to see.
And is there any human evidence linking this gene to fat or metabolism?
Yes, and that's another important validation point for them. Human genetic studies have found that people with natural variations in the INHBE gene that cause it to function less, essentially, they naturally make less activin E, tend to have less abdominal fat and a lower risk of metabolic diseases.
So nature kind of provides a clue that targeting this pathway could be beneficial in humans.
Exactly. It's strong genetic validation, different from Scholar Rock's clinical validation in SMA, but compelling in its own right.
So based on all that, Arrowhead moved into human trials.
Yep, they started the ARO-INHBE 1001 trial. It's a phase 1/2A study, standard stuff initially. Safety, tolerability, how the drug moves through the body.
Phase 1/2A. Okay.
But it also includes dose escalation and, crucially, a cohort testing ARO-INHBE in combination with weekly tirzepatide. They're using lower starting doses of tirzepatide, 2.5 to 5 milligrams.
And they started dosing.
Yes, dosing began back in December 2024.
Okay, so when might we actually see some human data from this?
The expectation is for initial data by the end of 2025. So a bit further out than Scholar Rock's June readout, but it'll be the first real look at this novel mechanism in people, especially with a GLP-1.
Now, one thing that really jumps out about Arrowhead's RNAi approach is the potential dosing schedule, right?
Yeah.
Compared to antibodies or even weekly GLP-1s.
That's potentially a huge advantage. It's one of the big attractions of the RNAi platform for chronic diseases. These therapies can achieve very durable gene silencing. Meaning one dose can keep the gene turned down for a long time. This could allow for very infrequent dosing, maybe once every 3 months, or even once every 6 months.
Wow, compared to a monthly IV infusion like apitegromab.
Or even weekly GLP-1 shots. Imagine you're already taking a weekly injection. Adding another therapy that you only need, say, quarterly or twice a year, that's a massive difference in convenience.
So the current trial design, dosing on day 1 and day 29, that's just to figure out the dose and duration.
Exactly. They need to see how different doses perform and how long the effect lasts to determine the optimal infrequent dosing schedule for later trials. But the potential for infrequent subcutaneous injection is inherent to the modality.
That convenience factor could be a major commercial differentiator. Patient adherence is everything in chronic treatment.
Absolutely critical. If the efficacy is there, that dosing profile could be a game changer.
Okay, let's crystallize the comparison. Scholar Rock, direct muscle target, myostatin brake release, antibody, monthly IV, validated in human muscle disease, phase 2 data, June 25.
Versus Arrowhead, indirect approach via liver gene, INHBE, silencing activin E to affect fat metabolism and spare muscle, RNAi, potentially very infrequent subcutaneous shots, strong preclinical genetic validation, phase 1/2A data, end of 25.
Myostatin pathway versus liver gene silencing, antibody versus RNAi, monthly IVs versus maybe quarterly sub-Q.
Scholar Rock has that first mover visibility in mid-stage trials for obesity, leveraging the SMA success story.
While Arrowhead is earlier, but offers this novel mechanism and the huge potential convenience advantage. If their data hits, they could potentially leapfrog,
That's the dynamic. Investor focus is high on Scholar Rock right now because June is so close. High stakes, potentially high volatility.
Arrowhead might be flying a bit more under the radar for now.
But that year-end data could make a big splash, especially if it confirms both efficacy and that potential for infrequent dosing.
So beyond the science, what does this mean commercially? How do these fit into the GLP-1 dominated world?
Well, think about payers. They're already grappling with the high cost of GLP-1s, right? Getting coverage just for weight loss can be tough.
Yeah, it's a major hurdle.
But a therapy that also preserves muscle, that offers a much stronger value proposition. It's not just about weight loss. It's about improved physical function, reduced risk of falls, reduced sarcopenia risk, potentially more sustainable weight management.
Healthier outcomes, basically.
Exactly. Things that reduce downstream healthcare costs. That makes payers more likely to see the value and potentially cover these add-on therapies despite the GLP-1 costs.
And patients themselves are becoming more aware of the muscle issue, demanding this quality weight loss.
Definitely. Patients want to feel strong and capable as they lose weight. It's about health and vitality, not just the number on the scale. That patient and doctor demand will push payers, too.
Then there's that form factor challenge we touched on, adding another injection or infusion.
Right. A monthly IV infusion for apitegromab adds complexity, clinic visits, maybe home health.
Whereas if ARO-INHBE pans out with quarterly or biannual subcutaneous shots,
That's a much easier add-on for someone already doing weekly injections. That convenience can't be overstated for long-term use. It's a huge potential win.
so looking ahead, what's the future treatment paradigm likely to be?
It really looks like combination therapy will be key. A GLP-1 driving the main fat loss, paired with a muscle-sparing agent.
Makes sense. Synergistic effects.
And maybe these combos could even allow for slightly lower GLP-1 doses, potentially easing side effects while still getting great fat loss and adding the muscle benefit. The whole field is moving towards more personalized, multi-target approaches.
Okay, let's wrap this deep dive up. The core problem: significant muscle loss during highly effective GLP-1 weight reduction. A major challenge.
And we've got two key players, Scholar Rock and Arrowhead, making very different bets on how to solve it.
Scholar Rock attacking the muscle directly via myostatin, building on their SMA success with that crucial EMBRAZE data coming in June 2025.
And Arrowhead, taking a novel route through a liver gene, activin E, using RNAi, holding that trump card of potential infrequent dosing with initial human data expected by year-end 2025.
It's clear the conversation is shifting, right? Beyond just weight, towards optimizing body composition, preserving function, aiming for truly healthy weight loss.
Absolutely. The focus is broadening in a really important way.
And the upcoming data from both these companies. It's not just make or break for them, it's going to be pivotal in shaping how we approach obesity treatment overall.
It really will set new benchmarks and start defining what quality weight loss means in clinical practice.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. When this data does land, what are the specific metrics beyond just the percentage of lean mass saved that will really define success? How much will that potential convenience factor, infrequent dosing, weigh against, say, a potentially stronger direct muscle effect? Which bet, the direct muscle intervention or the novel systemic modulation, seems more likely to win out in the long run, both clinically and commercially? Something to think about as we watch this space unfold.